and welcome to the very first episode of The Sad Moms. My name's Ishani, and I'll be your host for this podcast. We also have my doggy Clover here, and if you're listening and you're not watching, then she's a really cute... Hi, yes, you. She's a really cute German Shepherd Lab mix, and she's kind of here to emotionally support me today on our first episode. This podcast is meant to be a space for bereaved parents like myself, where we can share our honest and open feelings about the specific type of grief that we're going through. At least that's where it's going to start, but all are, of course, welcome to listen. You may be a newly bereaved parent or someone who's been walking this path for some time now. Either way, this is a safe place for us to discuss our grief, because I do believe we fall into a really lonely space of the grief world. At least that's what it's been like for me. And maybe you're not a bereaved parent, maybe you're here to support someone, get a new perspective on grief, or maybe you just want to learn a little bit more about our side of things and what we're going through. Whatever the reason may be, I'm grateful that you're here with me today. This podcast is called The Sad Moms, and that name is really important to me because it stems from a group of bereaved moms that I've connected with over the last 2 years, and that's what we call ourselves, The Sad Moms. I don't know where I would be without this group of women that I've connected with. And that's why I created this podcast, because I feel really alone. I feel like I've lost all of my friends and my family and all the people that I had in my life when my son was alive. And now all the people that I talk to are my fellow sad moms. So I'm here because I feel like I need you guys and I need a community. And I hope that you guys are out there looking for a community as well, and you're listening here because maybe you feel a little bit of what I feel. My hope is that this podcast can be a space where you feel seen and heard and understood, and maybe just a little less alone. Today is our first episode, and it's a little bit different than what I've planned out for the subsequent episodes, which would be other sad moms coming on and sharing their stories. But for today, it's me kind of introducing myself and sharing my own story. So please bear with me, listening to myself, listening to my voice, recording myself, all of this. I'm totally out of my comfort zone. This is not me. I don't even take selfies. So looking at myself and hearing myself is kind of cringe for me. I'm trying my best. So thank you for being here and making it even this far into listening. The only thing I do know is that the most comfortable I feel is when I'm talking to other bereaved parents. That's the only time I feel like I can be myself, I can share my feelings, and I can just be me. I'm going to share a little bit about my story now, which is going to be incredibly difficult for me. So I'm going to take a deep breath and we're going to get into it. So here it goes. Okay. So I became a mom on October 29th, 2014, when my beautiful son, Rylan, was born. Rylan's birth was very traumatic in itself. When he was born, he wasn't breathing and he had to be rushed to the NICU. I didn't get to hold him right away, but they kind of rolled him by me as they were taking him to the NICU and the incubator. And that moment is like burned into my brain. I remember his eyes were open and I got to see him for the first time. And I remember saying, "He's beautiful. He's just so beautiful." And I was instantly just connected to him. Thankfully, he didn't have to be in the NICU for long, and I got to hold him that evening. I fell so deeply in love with him. And to this day, that love is unmatched. When we came home, we began to notice that he was not meeting his developmental milestones. And there were a lot of medical problems that doctors were unable to explain. The first 2 years of his life were spent in many hospitals and therapy centers, just trying to understand what was going on because he remained undiagnosed. From the beginning, my husband and I just wanted to support him and make sure he had all the resources and all of the things that he needed. We set up our medical team and we had an excellent, life-changing therapy center where he did all of his speech, occupational, and physical therapies. And there is a wonderful community that kind of built from there. Rylan was undiagnosed until he was 4 years old. We actually had to apply for a program called the Undiagnosed Diseases Network. In February of 2019, when he was 4, he was diagnosed with one of the rarest neurodegenerative mitochondrial diseases in the world. At the time of diagnosis, he was one of 20 cases found globally. I believe that number has since increased, but not by much. That's a lot of medical mumbo jumbo that isn't really telling you who Rylan is, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of background so you know where I'm coming from. Medically speaking, Rylan is severely disabled, non-speaking, and had cortical visual impairment. So we as parents had to do everything for him. We supported him in all aspects of daily life. And it will always be one of the greatest joys of my life to have taken care of him. Rylan is one of the happiest kids on the planet, and he just exudes love. He is always smiling, except for sometimes when he was doing his therapies, he would cry a little bit during those times. But just such a happy child. Every time you see him, he's just happy. He wants to smile. He's just an awesome kid that just really, really, really enjoys life. Some of his favorite things are music, especially Disney and troll songs, animals. He loves reading books. And his absolute favorite thing in the world are his 2 little sisters. I don't think I mentioned yet that somewhere along all that medical info that I was sharing, we did have 2 little girls. Rylan was born in 2014. Then we had our middle child in 2016, and our youngest was born in 2018. We really had life dialed in, and we were living in like pure chaos in this tiny house of ours, but it was perfect. We had each other, and we were a whole family. The people around us were so amazing. Like I mentioned, we were going to a wonderful therapy center. There were such great people there, wonderful families that we've connected with over the years. And the disability community is just such a powerhouse, just really strong, amazing parents. And we were part of a thread of incredible humans, incredible children, incredible parents. My husband and I and our family, we just felt so supported and lifted up. Life was hard, but it was really, really good. And then 2022 happened. We were told that Rylan had to have hip surgery, and we had heard a lot of difficult things about this particular surgery that he had to have from other parents who had to go through that with their children. So we had heard a lot of things about the recovery time and the surgery itself. And we were worried and nervous and not really looking forward to him having to go through that. He had surgery in March of 2022. And 2 months after he had the surgery, we discovered that he had contracted an infection. So he had to go back in for a second surgery. They had to go in and take out the metal brackets that were put in the first hip surgery. After that, he had to go on some pretty intense antibiotics for 3 months, which fell over the summertime of 2022. Those antibiotics were administered at home through a PICC line. So that procedure, all of those 3 months in itself were also really difficult because he was not feeling well. He was not feeling himself. He had to be on a lot of medication. And there were a lot of times and a lot of questions with doctors during that time that went unanswered. It was a lot of let's see and let's wait. And nobody would really tell us exactly what was going on. But I remember we continued to ask, like, why is he on antibiotics for so long? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And we would always get the runaround. I think over Rylan's lifetime, we discovered that physicians did not always value his life or take what we as parents had to say seriously. And that's always been really difficult dealing with the healthcare system over his lifetime, because I truly feel, and this is an episode for maybe another day, but I really do feel like the healthcare system does not value the lives of kids who are disabled or have severe disabilities or severe cognitive differences. So like I said, that's an episode for another time because there's a lot of layers to that. But it was a difficult time. He got through those 3 months of being on those antibiotics, and then he had to have the third surgery, which was redoing the hip surgery, and that was in September of 2022. he came out of that, and then he had his 8th birthday in October. We got through November, and it seemed like things were starting to improve. And by December, I felt like he was really on an upward trajectory. He was starting to be more himself. He was healing and recovering from the surgery. He was back doing his therapies. We were doing school remotely. It seemed like things were starting to get back to our version of normal. December came, and I really thought that things were looking up. I really thought that things were getting better. I remember telling my friends, like so clearly, I remember telling my friends, he's doing so much better. I have all these trips planned, and because I thought, like, you know, he deserved to be celebrated because of everything he had gone through that year. It had been so hard. We got through Christmas, and then the morning of December 30th came. It's really difficult for me to recount that day because it's the worst fucking day of my life, but I will try my best. We woke up that morning and he was having a rough day, but as a medical parent, you go through a lot of rough days. There was never a thought in my mind that morning that that would be the last day. While my husband was holding him on our couch, his caregiver was also there. We were talking about what we were going to do next, and he stopped breathing. I gave him CPR on the floor of our home, and the paramedics came, and they revived him. We were rushed to the hospital, not the same hospital that our medical team is at, but we were taken to the hospital that he was born because it is the hospital that's closest to our house. I'm going to go back in time a little bit, but when Rylan was 2 years old, he had a febrile seizure that was incredibly severe. And at that time, he was also rushed to this hospital where he was born, and there was a trauma physician that was there that saved his life. And when we went to the ER that day, that same trauma physician was there. Everything in this moment in that ER is pure chaos, but there are some flashes that come to my mind. There was literally a nurse that was laughing in the room while he was crashing. I'll never forget her face, and I'll never forget that my son was dying and she was laughing. My husband and I both talked to him the whole time. I mean, the room was completely filled with doctors and nurses, but we talked to him the whole time. We never stopped talking to him. There were 3 different social workers in the room that were trying to pull us out. They were trying to tell us we needed to calm down. They were trying to tell us to wait outside. We didn't even listen to them. We completely blocked them out. There was no way we were going to leave that room. I fell on the ground a couple of times. The trauma physician I was mentioned earlier came, and he told us there was nothing else that they could do. And we did not accept that answer. He said he could run a couple of more tests, and then we got transferred to the PICU. They let us watch the testing from the adjoining PICU room, so we were watching through a window while they were running the tests. And I'll never forget this, but as we were watching through the window, the nurse gave us a thumbs up. And within minutes of that, the code blue light went on over his room. There was a train of people lined up doing CPR on him. They were all crying. I held his hand and I told him that he is everything, that his sisters love him, that we love him, and that we will always love him. He died at 1:34 p.m. There's no coming back from your child dying. If you are someone who is not a bereaved parent and you're listening to this, You should be fucking stunned that I get up every morning, because there's just no coming back from that. I sat and I held him in the hospital for hours until late evening. The second worst thing that I experienced that day was having to tell my daughters that their brother died. They woke up that morning and everything was okay, and they had to come to a hospital room that afternoon and see me holding him, and I had to tell them. Late that night, after the girls had gone home, our friends had come and gone, my husband and I just sat in the bed with him. We laid next to him, and they expected us to leave. That's the hospital protocol. Like, we had to leave. To this day, I don't know how we left. How the fuck were we supposed to just leave him there? How the fuck were we supposed to just walk away? My husband and I got in bed with him and we sang his bedtime song one last time, which is Yellow by Coldplay. I asked the nurse that was there to take care of him to play Disney instrumental songs, and she was very kind. Those are his favorite. And we left that room in the hospital he was born in, and we went home. It's been a little over 2 years since that day. It still feels like yesterday to me. For me, the longer the time has gone by, the worse it's gotten. The hardest part is having to pretend most of the time. And we'll get into that in future episodes, but there's just so much pretending that goes into being a bereaved parent, so much pretending that goes into just seeming like you're fine and you're okay. What I mean by pretending is that, going to work, doing stuff at the girls' schools, social events. I try to avoid any and all social events that I can, but sometimes there are some I can't avoid because of my kids. And don't even get me started on the anxiety of meeting new people, because we all know what question is going to come up at some point. It's, how many kids do you have? I have 3 kids. I will always have 3 kids. Having to manage other people and their comments and society as a whole has been incredibly difficult. And it's something that we'll get into in future episodes. If you're listening to this, maybe you understand those feelings. Maybe you've gone through things that are similar. And that's why I'm here. That's why I started the Sad Moms. I wanted to create a space where we can share our stories and we can discuss our grief openly, and also figure out how the fuck to continue living this life without our kids physically here with us. Like I said, it's been 2 years for me, and I still don't understand what's happening. I still think that I'm going to hold him again. I still think that. And that's not just me being delusional. He's my child. He's connected to me. I still believe that he's here. So 2 years later, it's not real to me. It's not real that he's gone. And I have just continued to move on with life and do all the things that I have to do. But it's like, and I've mentioned this to other sad moms before, I feel like a part of my brain is just trying to protect itself from everything that has happened. I'm not here to tell you how to grieve or what your grief process should look like, but I do believe in the power of connection. The only form of sanity I have found during this time is connecting with other bereaved parents, and that's why I'm here. I have felt so deeply alone, and if it wasn't for the sad moms that I've met along the way, I don't know what I would do. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this first episode, it's that you're not alone, and I'm here, and maybe we could feel less alone together and share how we're feeling and what we're going through. In the coming weeks, I will be sharing more about my story and my experience with grief over the last 2 years. And I will be having other sad moms come on here and share their stories and what it's been like for them. I hope that we can find a way to connect with each other, talk about our kids, share stories, support one another, and also find a way to honor our children while being in this space together. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for trusting me with your heart and with your time. If this episode resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear from you, whether it's through an email, a message through social media, or even a review of this podcast. I would love to hear from you and hear your story. You matter, your children matter, and I would be honored to connect with you. Until next time, this has been The Sad Moms. I'm your host, Ishani, and I hope to see you next time. Here at The Sad Moms, I'm not going to tell you to have a good day, because that in itself is crushing. Like, no, I'm not going to have a good day. There's never going to be another fucking good day ever again. So for now, I'm just going to say, have a day, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of The Sad Moms. Help us spread awareness about grief and grow our community by writing an Apple review, rating us on Spotify, subscribing on YouTube, and sharing with as many people as you can. Until next time, have a day.